Hey everyone, welcome to Things We Said Today, a Beatles podcast about the Beatles, anything and everything to do with the Beatles, together and apart. We'll discuss it all here on this show. I'm Darren DeVivo from WKZE Radio in the Hudson Valley of New York State, 98.1 FM, 105.9 FM, and WKZE.com. I host a show called Noises from the Valley, which you can hear on Friday nights from 7 to 11 o'clock. I've spent it's 42 years now on the radio, most of them spent at another radio station I shall not mention, but now at WKZE on Friday nights. And I love hanging out with these two guys, my dear friends, on Things We Said Today, my co-hosts. You know Ken Michaels from his years broadcasting Beatle programming. He's been in radio a little longer than I've been, and most of it's been spinning the tunes of the Fab Four. Currently hosts Every Little Thing, a syndicated show that's based in the New York City metro area on WFDU. And later on in the show, Ken will share the details on that. In addition to Every Little Thing, is Ken Michaels Radio on YouTube, which is packed solid with interviews and other Beatle-ish, and sometimes he'll get off the Beatle track a little bit on Ken Michaels Radio. And Ken also co-hosts Talk More Talk, which I do as well, with Kid O'Toole, Talk More Talk, which concentrates solely on solo Beatles. And sometimes we combine. Lately, we've been doing a lot of shows where we're combining the two, but that's not the case today. So Ken, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Boy, you were saying you're from the Hudson Valley, was it?
Well, yeah, because when you hear they're actually in the WKZE is in Red Hook, New York. When you hear Red Hook, people familiar with the New York area think immediately the neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Mm.
But Red Hook's a little town up in Dutchess County near um, Rhinebeck, and I always end up just saying, you know what, it's in the Hudson Valley, or it's in and thus the name of the show, Noises from the Valley. Uh,
Because from your backdrop, it looks like you're from another planet. That's all.
Yeah, well, noises from another planet. Also, I'd like to welcome Allan Kozinn. Allan is the co-author of volumes one and two of the McCartney Legacy books. Behind him, you'll see the red book is volume one, the blue book is volume two, but you know that already because you all have bought two copies of each. And coming up, Allan and Adrian Sinclair are working on volume three at the moment, which I always get this. I, for some reason, can't get this locked into my head. 2028,
Yep,
or is it 27? It is 28.
28.
And that's when we're going to see volume three of the McCartney Legacy. Allan has been a writer for actually roughly as long as Ken and I, a little longer, have been in radio. Allan wrote for the New York Times. Right now, you can read his work in the Wall Street Journal and other publications, and plus there's other books that he's written on the Beatles and classical music, etc. I'm probably leaving something out. Oh, right, highlights for children. I forgot. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my friend all the way from New England, Mr. Allan Kozinn. Hi, Allan.
Hi, Darren, and hello,
Actually,
Ken.
they both are. Ken is too in New England. I just realized that. So today's show is going to be a little bit of a belated salute to George Harrison, a belated birthday salute to George, because we didn't actually acknowledge his birthday, which passed on February 25th. You know, ever since that whole thing with George being born potentially minutes before midnight on
Mm.
February 24th, I needed that to mess my head up and get confused. And now sometimes I have to stop and think, is today George's birthday? Or was it yesterday? But it's February 25th. We seem to be locking back on the original date.
Good.
Back in 1943, it was hard to believe. The youngest Beatle would have been 83 years old if he was still with us. So today's show will focus on our favorite George Harrison songs. And we'll do that after the news, which is coming up next with Ken.
Okay.
Ken?
Actually, it's our top 10 George Harrison songs
Yes.
from his solo career.
Right.
Okay. And also, just want to mention thanks to all of you for the tremendous response We've had on our last couple of shows, Mark Lewisohn. You couldn't have a better guest than Mark Lewisohn here. And between this channel on YouTube and the Talk More Talk channel, we had over 5,000 views for that. And that's not even counting all the audio platforms that we've been on. So for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Very easy. Just click on right there, that button that says subscribe on YouTube. So in news, we have plenty to get to. It was announced last week that Ringo Starr will have his next new album out April 27th. This is the follow-up to his country album Look Up, called Long, Long Road. Like its predecessor, it is produced by T-Bone Burnett. The new album will contain 10 songs, and one of them has already been made available online, called It's Been Too Long, which features Sarah Jarosz and Molly Tuttle. A visualizer video has been made for the song, which you can now see on YouTube. The album includes collaborations with Billy Strings, Sheryl Crow, and St. Vincent. 6 of the 10 songs were written or co-written by T-Bone Burnett. 2 were written by Ringo with Bruce Sugar, and 1 is actually a cover of his song Choose Love, written with Mark Hudson and Gary Burr. And the other is a cover of a song that Carl Perkins covered, called I Don't See Me in Your Eyes Anymore. The 10 song titles are, in this order, Returning Without Tears, Baby Don't Go, I Don't See Me in Your Eyes Anymore, It's Been Too Long, Why, You and I, and subtitled Wave of Love, My Baby Don't Want Nothing, Choose Love, She's Gone, and Long, Long Road. Remember, Ringo hits the road with his all-star band beginning May the 28th. Have you guys heard the new Ringo song? And if so, what
Yes.
do you think?
It's good.
Darren?
Energetic,
Eh,
right?
Eh?
You expect from
eh.
Ringo?
Yeah, it's what you'd expect from Ringo, and I would venture to guess that most Ringo fans will probably really enjoy it, and it's going to, more than half are into it. It needs a few listens. It didn't jump out at me like some of his initial singles, but we see what the album is going to bring.
Okay.
Like
Definitely.
we always say, as we hear things the second, third, fourth, fifth, 20th time,
Right.
you know, it'll click a little more.
Right. I've been enjoying it. Certainly has a very commercial sound, very well produced, sounding very much like Look Up. So, yeah, the man is like the Energizer Buddy.
I just wish more people would be taking notice.
Hmm.
That I'm not saying that he should be, debuting in the top 10 on Billboard. I know that's not real these days, but I just wish more people were aware of the fact that for no other reason than he's in his mid 80s and he's
Uh-huh.
still putting out new music, um, good new stuff. I mean, this isn't, um, I don't want to mention knock any other artists, but he's still putting out quality work. He's got top-notch people playing with him.
Right.
And I just wish more people were sort of aware, but this is the state of, you know, music and the industry today that these artists, I guess, you know, don't get
It's
that
real.
sort of attention.
Yeah. Well, when you get to be a certain age, you get less airplay on radio, less attention in the media. The Beatles as a group get tons of attention, and there are certain things like the Beatles biopics getting a lot of attention right now. Man on the Run got a lot of attention, I will admit. But yeah, it's very tough for any veteran artist for their music to sell when it's not played to younger audiences that buy the music. All right, we note the passing of Len Gary, one of the original
Oh
members
yeah.
of the Quarrymen. Len grew up in Liverpool and was a classmate of Paul's at the Liverpool Institute School for Boys. He joined the Quarrymen in 1956 and played tea chess bass and played in the band the day that Paul met John at the famous St. Peter's Church meeting July 6th, 1957. He went on to play guitar in the group. He reunited with the surviving non-Beatles members of the Quarrymen in 1994, and the group released three albums together in 1997, Songs We Remember in 2004, and Gray Album in 2012. He was also the frontman for a rock gospel group called Come Together later in life. And in 2014, he released his own book telling his story called John, Paul, and Me Before the Beatles, The True Story of the Very Early Days. The book is still available through Amazon. Tributes have appeared online for Len, including one from Paul McCartney himself, who said, "My dear old mate from the Quarrymen, Len Gary, has passed away. He was a lovely guy, and I'm sad to see him go, but glad that we had so many fun times together. Rest in peace, Len. Love, Paul." Mark Lewisohn wrote to me, "Yes, it was sad to see Len go. Now only two of the original Quarrymen are left, which is the way of things, of course. I met Len a handful of times, and he was always good company, happy to be part of the greater Beatles picture." David Bedford wrote, "A sad day to wake up to the news that Len Gary has died. One of the original Quarrymen, he had been performing with the Reformed Quarrymen for many years until illness meant he couldn't continue. I had the privilege of playing with him on my debut with the Quarrymen back in April 2023 at Strawberry Field, and his voice was still as good as ever. He will be sadly missed." Very nice that Paul wrote something. You know, you never know when it comes to the Quarrymen if he's going to note their passings. I remember one of the early Quarrymen, Eric Griffiths, passed away several years ago. I don't recall Paul saying anything back then. But, you know, very nice that he said something. McCartney News, first of all, his documentary, Man on the Run, started streaming on February 27th on Amazon Prime. The soundtrack album for Man on the Run was released the same day. Did you both get a copy of the soundtrack?
Hmm.
Yes, I did.
Anything you want to say about it, Alan?
Not really. I haven't listened to it because I know all that stuff. I mean, really.
Yeah, it was just, you know what's funny? The Wings album, the hits collection that came out late last year,
Yeah.
would have probably served to be a better
Mm.
release to go with the documentary. The soundtrack is almost kind of pointless because roughly approximately half the album is just hits and what is it? An outtake of Arrow Through Me, or an early take, an early mix,
Which has already been
which
bootlegged in
you know,
excellent quality.
Mm.
okay, and just put out Back to the Egg already.
Yeah.
I
And I
love
don't know
it.
if Gotta Sing, Gotta Dance needs to be now a song that is available on an album for the first time. I
Hmm.
guess completists, you know.
Yeah.
But I think the Wings album would have been, they should have held it and released that in February to go with the documentary. Maybe got a little extra mileage out of, promoting it, this thorough overview of Wings, but
Well,
they didn't ask me.
the
But
soundtrack reflects songs that were in the documentary, and there's a lot of stuff that was in the Wings compilation that wasn't.
There was a lot of stuff in the documentary that wasn't on the album.
yeah, all the interesting stuff from the documentary wasn't in on the album. You know, there were a lot of outtakes and odd mixes and things like that in the
Mm.
documentary. The album could have included all that stuff, plus that "You Are My Sunshine" a cappella at the end. That
Right.
should have been on
Yeah.
there. Um, but yeah, you know, I think they maybe they didn't uh, release the Wings compilation close to the film because most of us were already confused about whether it was a Wings documentary anyway. I mean, we had that discussion two
Mm.
episodes ago when Adrian came on, and we're treating it as a Wings documentary and are astonished that they don't even mention four of the seven Wings album. And Adrian is saying, well, but it's not a Wings documentary. It's a Paul after the Beatles documentary. But in that case, why does it only go up to when Wings broke up? You know?
Right.
Yeah. And it's sort of the just the proximity of the release of the book, which has Wings on the cover,
Yeah.
and the Wings album,
Hmm.
and now the documentary, they were all so close to one another, and they were kind of, if I'm not mistaken, when the book came out, wasn't it sort of weren't I don't know, weren't we sort of led to believe this is the first of the numerous you know, stages of these releases celebrating Wings?
That's what I thought.
Hmm.
You can always say, but on the album for the soundtrack, it says Paul McCartney. It doesn't say Wings.
Yeah, yeah.
And the movie is called Paul McCartney, Man on the Run,
Man on the Run.
not Paul McCartney in Wings or Wings. But if you're doing a documentary on Paul McCartney in the 70s, 90% of that is Wings.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of like what I would expect.
I'm
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
trying to watch or listen to many of the Morgan Neville interviews, and he glossies over a lot of stuff and a few facts he gets wrong here and there, but he's definitely a fan. So I'm glad to have somebody who appreciates what Paul went through to
Mhm.
talk about it. Well, there's something I have to say about Man on the Run at the end of the newscast, which I told you guys about, which was a big shock to me. Should I just say it now?
You might as well.
Um, Thanks to one of our listeners, Tom Brennan, who I call the
Oh, right.
Badfinger guy because he knows everything about Badfinger. Um, I'm in the credits for
Oh,
Man on
that's
the Run.
right. Yes.
And I didn't know that because I saw it in the theater, and the credits go by very quickly. And it does say for additional information, and it has Ken Michaels Radio in there. I
Oh,
never knew that.
nice.
So, yeah. So,
And do you know what was the?
I don't know what they used. They could have used any of my interviews from Wings members.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And actually, it would make just as much sense to go to my website because I have an interview with Henry McCullough in there, which would have been very valuable.
Hmm.
But there's interviews with Denny Sywell, Lawrence Juber, and Steve Holly on my YouTube channel. So maybe they took something from there. I'm deeply flattered that I got a credit.
Yeah.
So thank you to Morgan and everyone that worked on the film. Wish I knew what it was that they used, but thank you anyway. Yeah, it's like a dream for any of us. If my name was ever on the credits of a McCartney album or something, it's like, that's it. I can retire now.
Well,
But
I was mentioned in the Quarrymen book that came out. It has to be it was probably the first time that they were making the go round.
uh-huh.
And they a book came out about them, and some of it was like talking about their experiences back with the name the Quarrymen,
Mm.
meeting Beatle fans and going and appearing at Beatle Fest. And there's a mention of, and that morning we had an appearance on Darren DeVivo's radio show, and they got the call letters wrong, which I don't care about that.
Especially
Um,
now.
Especially now, you could call it WXXX for all I care. But I was like flipping out that I was mentioned in the book. Um, that was like, oh, they capitalized the first V in DeVivo too.
That's
Nice,
that's
nice,
very good. They pay
very important.
attention to detail.
Always capitalize the first V, folks.
Okay.
Anyway, so
All right, more news. Um, for reasons unknown, and it seems like most sites online are questioning why, two Wings albums and two solo McCartney albums have just been reissued. Those being the Wings albums Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway, and solo McCartney albums Flowers in the Dirt and Flaming Pie. They've all been reissued on CD, and Flowers in the Dirt has also been reissued on vinyl. Have no idea why they're doing this. But for those of you that have to get every version, every edition of every album, I might know a few people like that. You probably know about this already. On March the 3rd, and for several days after in Paris, Paul and Nancy and McCartney family attended the unveiling of Stella's Fall Winter 2026-2027 collection, which is meant to mark the lunar year of the fire horse. And it was staged inside a riding hall in Bois de Boulogne. It was presented during Paris Fashion Week, honoring, as I said, the year of the horse. Stella McCartney's Winter 2026 runway collection traces her life to date, and every year, 1 billion animals are killed for leather, including horses. Stella McCartney received the Legion of Honor Award from French President Macron on March the 6th, and the McCartney family attended the ceremony. Very nice award given to Stella. The new two album set coming from the Claypool and Delirium, The Great Parrot Ox and The Golden Egg of Empathy, includes 14 psychedelic and progressive songs and a 24-page original comic book by Rich Ragsdale. It's due out May the 1st. The song The Golden Egg of Empathy, featuring Willow, is their new single, which you can now stream.
Hmm.
Some new books coming out later this year include a new one from Hunter Davies called Get Back, The Boys Who Became the Beatles. This will be a hardcover book coming out September 17th, and Paul McCartney has contributed to the book. Hunter Davies is now 90 years old.
Wow.
Thanks to John Bazzini for that information. Another book coming is called Meet the Beatles. That's M-E-A-T, Meet the Beatles, The Beatles Butcher Cover by Erica White. It's described as the untold story behind the Beatles' controversial album artwork, due out in November. More information there from John Bazzini. In addition to the recent issue of Record Collector magazine from December, devoted entirely to George Harrison, Uncut magazine, as part of their Uncut Greats series, just put out an issue for George called The Life Story, The Greatest Music. You might want to go check out. Owen Lynn's recent book, George Harrison in the 1970s, has just been made available as an ebook, as has Madeline Baccaro's In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono. Some releases also on the horizon for this year, don't have the release dates yet for. Ken Womack and Jason Krupa writing a book on the Beatles' activities in 1974. Ken Womack and Scott Fryman collaborating on two books examining in detail all the Beatles songs, the Beatles studio era. The Beatles studio era inside the Fab Four's artistry song by song. The first book is due out later this year, the second volume next year. Kevin Soling, musician and filmmaker who's been collaborating on a stage show with Charles Rosenay called The Life, Death, and Rebirth of the Beatles, is working on a book to be coming out later this year, all on one Beatles song, Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Maxwell finally gets its due. Glenn Greenberg, who's been a guest on my YouTube channel several times, known for his bookazines for the 80th birthdays for John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and for a Beatles trivia issue as well, wrote to me that he has a new bookazine coming out called The Beatles in America, The Touring Years. It covers the events leading up to the first U.S. visit, and then the 1964, 65, and 66 North American tours, and the gradual shift in the band from being very enthusiastic about conquering America to never wanting to perform live in the U.S. or elsewhere ever again. Aaron Badgley, who wrote the books Dark Horse, and that's all about George Harrison's record label. And Ringo Starr, Got to Pay Your Dues, is writing a book on a band that was rumored to have been the Beatles when they first came out, the Canadian band Klaatu. And finally, our good friend Luca Perassi told us on my channel that his next book for Beatle fans will be on the Wings album, London Town. So Luca is filling in the void for the albums that haven't gotten the box set treatment yet. Press to Play, Back to the Egg, and coming soon, London Town. James McCartney will have a new song coming out soon called Black Americano. Now, James has been putting out one song at a time online, and there's plenty there to listen to on YouTube. The Beatles on the Beach is happening the end of this week, March 12th through the 15th at Misner Park in Boca Raton, Florida. Special guests include Morgan Freeman, not Morgan Neville, Morgan Freeman, the great actor. With his symphonic blues experience, Greg Bissonette, Tom Frangione, and Caitlin Larkin from SiriusXM's Beatles channel, Charles Rosenay, and many Beatles tribute bands from around the world. For more information, you can go to BeatlesOnTheBeach.com.
You sure
Almost
it's not Tom Frangione? You sure it's not Tom Frangione's psychedelic symphony?
no,
Yes.
no, he wanted to get in on it though.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I have to say something about the loss of pop icon Neil Sedaka. Neil was one of the most successful songwriters in the rock era, whether writing with partner Howard Greenfield or on his own. He had many hits in the 60s. Then his career was sidelined by the Beatles and the British invasion, wrote for other artists like the Monkees, launched a massive comeback in the 70s, largely due to Elton John, who signed him to his Rocket label. He had hits again and also for the Captain and Tennille. He wrote hits for Connie Francis, Jimmy Clinton, ABBA, The Fifth Dimension, and The Carpenters. As a Beatle fan, you should be aware of one song that Neil wrote and recorded with John Lennon in mind, called The Immigrant, which was his follow-up single for his number one hit, Laughter in the Rain. Neil saw the struggles that John had getting his green card and with immigration authorities wanting him to leave the U.S., which prompted him to write this song, even though John's name isn't mentioned. The song went to number 22 on the Hot 100, but number one on the adult contemporary charts. What a more appropriate song that should be played today, considering the struggles that immigrants are going through with ICE deporting them and separating families too. The Immigrant, check it out. You can find it on YouTube. We should put up a link for that. You probably, if you grew up in the 70s, I'm sure you heard the song. It's really a
I
great
had the 45.
Yeah.
I had the single, yeah.
And May Pang said on Facebook, I don't want to forget to acknowledge the passing of singer-songwriter Neil Sedaka. I remembered when he called to speak with John and he told him that he was dedicating his song, The Immigrant, to him. John was so surprised by that wonderful gesture from Neil. Condolences to his family and friends. So
Mm.
John knew about it. Don't know what he thought of the song, but I know that he was aware that Neil had done that song for him. I should also add that my wife Joanne discovered, having spent a lot of time on Ancestry, she's the third cousin of Neil Sedaka.
Really?
Yeah, so we're
Wow.
kind of family. Since I'm
Yeah.
married to her, I'm Neil's cousin too.
Yeah, you are.
I should just throw in that I did his obit for the Washington Post. It ran
Oh,
in last Monday's paper, March 1st.
Oh, wow.
very nice. And Neil, by the way, was first cousins with Edie Gourmet.
Oh, really?
So
I
my
didn't know
wife,
that.
yeah,
Wow.
there was a lot brewing there in Brooklyn around that time.
And
Yeah,
I never knew that Oh Carol
was
was
for
written by
Carol.
Carole King. I don't think
Yeah,
I knew that. And he had a crush on Carole King back in the day.
yeah. I think they dated,
They
and in
did.
fact, yeah, Carol King had a response song, "O'Neill." Yeah, which was same melody, really. All right, and that's about it for the news, right there.
Thank you, Ken. And now we get into our show today. A belated happy birthday to George Harrison, our birthday celebration. We're going to talk about our favorite George Harrison songs. Keep it simple. These little countdowns, these lists are always fun. And of course, we'd love for you to share yours if you'd like down in comments after you click subscribe. Um, and I found it, actually, if I believe, was my idea to do this. And I thought, as a piece of cake, this was incredibly difficult to do because there is too many songs. I tried to get I at one point had 40 something songs that I was trying to pack into 10
Hmm.
and figuring out ways to do that. Um, so there are several George Harrison albums that I love that don't even turn up on my list. But let's find out first, though, what Ken and Allan enjoy listening to. We'll start off with Ken.
Why don't we start with Alan? Because every time that Alan's last, then he makes changes to his list because he doesn't want to include the same songs that we have. So this way he can't
Okay.
change anything.
All right. Other than Under the Mercy Wall, Alan,
Right,
what
yeah.
was on your list?
I didn't include either of the electronic soundtracks or anything from Wonderwall, although I love Wonderwall, and I was thinking of including Red Lady 2, which I really, really like. That's a nice track. So think of that as a cheating way of saying getting one more in there. Um, so I think I did actually hit all the albums, not counting live in Japan, and because I figured doing a lot. Okay, we also had a ground rule, which was that it was going to be only original George Harrison songs, and I think it was supposed to be just solo songs too, right? So, and I thought you could do something from Live in Japan as a way of cheating on that one because he did some Beatles things, but anyway, I didn't. So I started with, and these are more chronological than order of preference. There's uh, I couldn't even face trying to rank them in order of
Yeah.
preference. So I'm starting with Wawa from All Things Must Pass. Really also wanted Art of Dying and All Things Must Pass itself, but if I had to limit it to one, I like Wawa for a number of reasons. For one thing, I just like it as a song. I like the sound of it. And it also has sort of a Beatles autobiographical aspect of it, which is that he wrote it the day that he walked out of the Let It Be sessions. And Wawa is supposed to sort of fill in for like headache. You're giving me a headache.
Hmm.
Um, but I believe also Eric Clapton gave him a wah wah pedal. Is that true too? So it's both of those things. It's at least a
Sure.
headache.
Okay.
Yeah. The headache part, I think, is true.
That's
Yeah.
definitely true.
Um, I'm a we discussed this a bit when we did a show about living in the material world. I'm a relatively recent convert to living in the material world, and partly influenced by Ken to some degree because I think it's his favorite album of all albums ever made, right?
Very true.
Yeah, so I actually have two from that album. Be Here Now, just a stunningly beautiful track in a kind of Indian style. It's not so much Indian instrumentation or anything, but the way the melody unfolds is the way a Hindustani melody unfolds. So I really like that, and the message is, be here now. It's pretty good. And Don't Let Me Wait Too Long. Um, Also just a beautiful song, and it's like a lot of things on Living in the Material World. It deals with George's sort of mystical preoccupations. There's a lot of that throughout his discography, but I figure that because I have those two, which can be described as being about his mystical preoccupations. That let me off on Mystical One, which I was going to include from one of the later albums. uh, you know, okay, so that's three. Ding Dong from Dark Horse. Um, that one also does multiple duty, although probably just in my own mind. For some reason, and I associate it really closely with this song and uh, a couple of others, with the same kind of sound, even though they're not from the same album. Um, but they were also big hits. And so Ding Dong is standing in for a whole bunch of George Harrison songs that I at least associate together. And it's a great kind of New Year's song. You get a lot of Christmas songs. You don't get many New Year's songs. It's bright and ebullient, and it really is, a catchy tune. So that's
Hmm.
that. Um, this guitar from Extra Texture. Uh, for some reason, that one gets played a lot on Sirius XM, and it just sort of, stays in your ear. And I also really like the guitar playing on it, especially towards the end. There's a solo that's really pretty good, and it just George has a couple of tunes that refer to previous tunes, like "Here Comes the Moon."
Mhm.
And then this guitar, I Can't Keep From Crying, is the subtitle, obviously refers to While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's nothing like While My Guitar Gently Weeps, but somehow um, philosophically it seems close. Um,
George actually was writing that song because it was a response to all the criticism he had gotten for the Dark Horse tour and Dark Horse album, and in
mhm,
particular what Rolling Stone had written.
mhm,
He
mhm.
even says even climbed Rolling Stone walls in
Right,
there.
right.
So yeah, so he also used While My Guitar Gently Weeps and bounced off that idea. So
Yeah. It's also kind of funny because one of the lyrics is happier than I've ever been. And you wouldn't think of a song called This Guitar Can't Keep From
mm,
Crying as something you would sing if you're happier than you've ever been. But anyway, good track. All those years ago from somewhere in England. Um, Sort of obvious reasons to include that, his tribute to John. Paul and Ringo are also on it. And it's a great tune, and it's the probably the one upside of Warner having canceled the original version of Somewhere in England, because this is a later entry. If they hadn't done that, who knows if this would have even come out or if it would have come out within a few years or whatever. But it ended up on that album mainly because the album had been canceled and he had to sort of replace a few tracks, and that was one of the replacements. So I guess that was worth it. Was gonna choose Blood from a Clone just because
Mm.
I like I like the attitude of it. You're gonna cancel my album because it's not commercial enough. Here's commercial for you, okay? But anyway, all those years ago, I think is a better choice. Faster from
mhm.
Nice.
George Harrison. We have dealt with his spiritual fascinations. I figured it might be also worth mentioning his racing car fascination. And Faster is about that. And it's a great track, has a great video.
Mhm.
Uh,
With Jackie Stewart in it.
mm. Then Wake Up My Love from Gontrapo. I really like Gontrapo. I think that's one of the, great overlooked George Harrison albums, possibly because he did zero promotion for it. It just slipped into the bins and nobody knew anything about it. But I like almost the whole album, but that is like a really great, bright, energetic track, and it really grabs you. Um, and then there's that long hiatus after Gontrapo until Cloud Nine. Uh, Another album that I like just about everything on, but I chose When We Was Fab. Um, Also for obvious reasons, because it's very Beatley and it's about the Beatles. And you know, although I suppose, going on my earlier reasoning of including one song because it also involved for me several other songs, I should maybe not have chosen When We Was Fab because I already chose all those years ago, in
Mhm.
which case I would have chosen Devil's Radio. Um, but anyway, I think between the two, if I only had to listen to one now, I guess it would be When We Was Fab. And then finally, Any Road from Brainwashed.
Mm.
Um, just love that, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there kind of thing. It's also a good track, one of the best tracks on that album, but that again is an album with an awful lot of good stuff on it. So, Marwa Blues and yeah,
Yeah.
the whole album's fine. So those are my 10 and quite a few others I mentioned in passing.
It's
You're
hard.
not you're not allowed to change any of them now.
Okay.
That's it.
I wrote them down. Wah wah, be here now. Don't let me wait too long. Ding dong, ding dong. This guitar can't keep from crying. All those years ago. Faster, wake up my love when we was fab any road. You
Yep.
can't change a thing now.
Okay. I can live with that.
Ken? Pick 'em,
All right.
Ken.
I actually rated my top 10 here, which was not easy.
You
It's very
rated
easy
it?
for me, yeah, from number 10 to number one.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. So, for me to name my number one song is easy, but then all the others, there's so many songs I love. It's impossible. This really was very difficult. And imagine if I had to do this on, Paul McCartney with his massive catalog, or Ringo's, which is also huge. Um, my number 10, this is the only time I'm going to cheat because it's a tie, because I really can't pick between the two. So just say it's my top 11 here. But it's a choice between Devil's Radio and Cheer Down. I love Devil's Radio a lot because it's such a fantastic rocker. It's very biting. Eric Clapton's on it. When Cloud Nine came out for rock stations, even though Got My Mind Set on You was played a lot on hit radio stations and rock stations, and so was When He Was Fab. Devil's Radio was really a very big cut from that album, and I wish that it had been a single, even more so than When He Was Fab. I think it would have definitely been a really good hit, and nice to see George rocking. Uh, and also Cheer Down, I love a lot because of the attitude on the song, and instead of saying cheer up, it's cheer down. That's George's sense of humor, and he does so much slide guitar work on that song, more than he does on practically any of his solo material. Constantly, the last couple of minutes is just George doing lead guitar work and doing slide work. So I love it for those two reasons. My number nine song is Your Love Is Forever, which is an absolutely stunningly beautiful song on the George Harrison album. Very slow, very melodic. It's kind of like very peaceful song. The whole George Harrison album has a whole vibe to it of
It
just
does.
being very relaxed, calm, you know, almost, Gontrapo to some degree is like that because you get the feeling of being on an island or being in Hawaii, for that example. And Your Love Is Forever is just really beautiful melodically. The George Harrison album is such a brilliant album because it's him just accepting the way he is as a musician and as a songwriter, not necessarily trying to write hits, even though Blow Away was a hit. But it's just him being very comfortable, putting out what he feels like putting out. Your Love Is Forever is a great ballad, following another great ballad in Dark Sweet Lady, which is actually not on my list. But Your Love Is Forever is great. It's one of his best love songs in his solo career. My number eight song is Fish on the Sand, which I love a lot. I mean, I love the whole Cloud Nine album, but Fish on the Sand has a real country and western feel to it. Also very commercial and a song that I wish was a single. I think it had possibilities there too, just like Devil's Radio as a single. Um, there's so many high moments on the Cloud Nine album. For me, hearing That's What It Takes and Fish on the Sand back to back, I can't listen to one without listening to the next one because they just follow each other so well. And Fish on the Sand, again, very commercial, very catchy. George's voice is powerful on it. I love it. Um, Number seven, it's kind of like, even though it's played so much, it was George's biggest hit. How can you not have My Sweet Lord on your list? I never get tired of My Sweet Lord. And despite all the problems that George had with the lawsuit about it, with He's So Fine, it's a wonderful record. George's voice is in tip-top shape. The whole sound of it, his slide guitar work, that wall of sound that Phil Spector creates for that song is so perfect for it. Just like what he did on the entire All Things Must Pass album. I've said many times I'm a major fan of Phil Spector's work, and he's part of the reason why All Things Must Pass is as great as it
Yeah.
is, even though I always say the song and the strength of the song comes first. The production played such a big part on All Things Must Pass, just like Jeff Lynne's production played a big part in Cloud Nine. Um, Number six, I don't understand why this song rises higher and higher with me through the years, but I just love Run of the Mill. Run of the Mill is one of those songs. I keep thinking of John's voice when John talks about Across the Universe. That across the universe, he was very proud of the lyrics, like it stands like poetry. And it's the same thing with Run of the Mill. Just the words alone are special. And the melody is really nice. There's syncopation in the song, which George does a lot actually in his solo music when it's everyone has choice when to and not to raise their voices. That part of the song, it's a little bit different where he accents, the melody right there. Um, but I love the message in the song. Like everyone is responsible for their own actions here. It's you who decides which way you will turn. Um, and it's believed it was about Paul. Um, but fantastic song. Love the horns in it. There's no other song that sounds like Run of the Mill to me. Melodically and just the way that the whole song was arranged. It's brilliant. Number five, What is Life? What is Life is one of the best singles in the solo careers of the Beatles. It's my favorite single from him. Um, love the guitar riff in it. Very classic. There's something about starting a rock song with a great riff, which the Beatles
Yeah.
were experts at. What is Life is just that.
Mhm.
And I love all the horns in it. Again, Phil Spector's production was superb on it. Great melody. Can listen to it every day and never tire of What is Life. Number four is another ballad, extremely overlooked. Learning How to Love You, which is on 33 and a third, the last song on the album. Very soft, very gentle, a fantastic acoustic guitar solo in the middle from George. Supposed to be dedicated to Herb Alpert um, because they had problems in getting George's first album out to A&M. A&M was going to distribute it, but he actually ended up delivering his album late. That was after he signed with Warner Brothers. But Learning How to Love You is a beautiful melody and just a great love song. George has this knack of writing beautiful love songs that may not be all that commercial, but when you're hooked on them, there's nothing like them. I mean, you talk about people that write great ballads and love songs. Does it get any better than John, Paul, and George? Really? They're all such
Yeah.
master craftsmen at that. Number three, so I don't want to give any hints here as to what, you know, any of my favorite George Harrison songs might be on this list. But The Light That Has Lighted the World is number three. I love the message in that song. And we bring up this song all the time. If you have read I Me Mine from George, he actually wrote this song with Cilla Black in mind because it was about he was thinking about how Cilla Black was a Liverpool girl who became big. She moved to London. It was never the same. So all the local people lost their star. So Cilla ended up, I think she never recorded it, and George ended up doing it himself. So you could apply that in the message of the song about having love for the fans who respect him, the changes that he made in his life, who accept him the way that he is. You can relate that to him not being a Beatle anymore. He has a new life, and the light that has lighted the world. And who can see it is really the same message. But it's another song with a gorgeous melody. And Nicky Hopkins, just the right touch on the piano there in the middle of the song, his solo. really helps to make that song even better, a better recording. Love George's vocals. I love his spiritual vocals when he harmonizes with himself. Um, I just love everything about that song. Number two is the song All Things Must Pass, which I think is definitely a classic, and I love the way it came out on the album, the Phil Spector production. I wouldn't have it any other way than the way that it came out on that album. Again, love the lyrics of the song. You know, it's you have good and bad in life. It's not all gloomy. It's not always going to be sad. So that's what that song is all about. And finally, my number one song, which was one of my four wedding songs, I had one from each Beatle, is That Is All, which is what closed living in the material world. I'll never understand George's words, and I mean mine. He talked about that song like the lyrics and the melody came to him, and that was all, like no big deal. It's a gorgeous melody, fantastic melody, simple words that say a lot. That is all I want to say, our love can save the day. And in the middle, silence often says much more than trying to say what's been said before. It's a magnificent song, which, I'll go to my grave saying it deserves to be as well known as something. It's that beautiful.
Mm.
Um, I mean, that is all. Your love is forever. Learning how to love you. Great love songs right there from George. And he's had others too, but those are the ones that are tops for me. And I love George's vocals on that is all. He hits some really high notes on there, and I love them. I also like how the song ends. It's kind of suspended
Yeah.
at the end.
Hmm.
Um, Brilliant song to close with. I really wish that song was considered a classic today because it deserves to be, as all these songs should be, other than, people know the hits like My Sweet Lord and What Is Life. They're both on here. But that's my top 10 of solo Harrison, all originals. And believe me, I was going through his entire catalog, got all these songs too. The only ones that have stars are the ones that made it. So there's so many others I could have put in there.
Did we have any that were the same?
Um, didn't you have All Things Must Pass?
No, I went with
No,
Wawa.
Oh, right,
no
right.
repeats.
That's
Um,
pretty good. The first
but
time, probably the first time we've done one of these lists where there were no repeats between.
Well,
well,
that's what
don't
we made you go first, because
don't forget we have Darren here.
That's
yeah,
right.
I
So
there
there's
you some of you picked songs that I picked.
okay.
I think Allan has two. And actually, I'm glad you picked a few. Some of your songs, Ken, were ones that were right. Like, how can I exclude this?
Hmm.
This song is one of my favorite George Harrison songs, but to try to keep it to 10, things like "Your Love Is Forever," "Learning How to Love You,"
That's in your list?
um, those would have been on my list.
Oh, okay.
Um, but you know, like you, I drew I had about like five or six. You can't even see with it. It's invisible paper I used. Um, I have like 10 or 11 or a dozen little scraps of paper like this all over the table here.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was a really hard thing to do. I'll say it again. I've said it before. Since I've said it before, now I'm saying it again. George is the most consistent of the four Beatles, I feel. In my opinion, there's not a bad album in his catalog. We can debate albums maybe that Ringo put out, or Paul or John, that might not be quote unquote great. You really got to stretch to find one from George. Um, for me, even Extra Texture, which is the album that I would say was probably his weakest, in my opinion, is still a extremely pleasant listen.
Hmm.
And I'm glad Allan picked this guitar. Um, Trying to think what the song is. There was a few of them. Sometimes I found that albums were getting canceled out of my list because there was numerous songs that I couldn't decide which one to go with, and they almost ended up like knocking them both
Hmm.
out of the picture for me. All Things Must Pass. I only have a couple of songs from the album because I could have picked almost all of George's 18 tunes on there. I think
Yeah.
that's how many there are. So there is a cover in my list, and there are 10 songs, and they are alphabetical in alphabetical order. I did try to rank them, and I gave up.
Mhm.
Starting with A, which is where most alphabets begin, we got Art of Dying is where I'm going to begin from All Things Must Pass. For me, it's the riff. I just love the way the song flows and chugs along. It's a tough topic for a song, and
Hmm.
it's a topic that few probably could tackle as well as George could. Um, Art of Dying is my first. And then a song that dates back to All Things Must Pass, Beautiful Girl, is
Hmm.
my second choice from 33 and a third. Now, pound for pound, 33 and a third is my favorite George Harrison album. And I always say this, listening, thinking of the albums as a single unit, All Things Must Pass includes Apple Jam.
Hmm.
And the presence of Apple Jam drops it behind 33 and a third for my money, where there isn't a flat song on there. I could have picked most of 33 and a third to be on this list. And Learning How to Love You was one song that I just had to drop because something had to give. So,
Don't you
Beautiful
think,
Girl.
I'm sorry, don't you think Apple Jam is just a bonus disc?
No, I think of it as the part of the album.
Okay.
But take it out of the picture, and it's hard to say that there's anything better than All Things Must Pass. So, but
But I
I do
think
try to
Apple
look at
Jam
it
is
as,
also underrated. I mean, that's a disc that in when I've played All Things
oh
Must
wow,
Pass, I had always skipped
yeah,
until the reissue a few years ago, and I listened to it and I said, wait, this is actually pretty good, you know?
yeah. When you're, I remember getting a copy and being so excited to get my a copy of All Things Must Pass when I was a kid, probably like when I was 11, because it had so much music in there, um, and while I never disliked Apple Jam, I rarely ever played it. Um, there's enough in the 18 songs on the first first two records there for careers of
Hmm.
for other artists right there alone.
Mhm.
All
Yep.
right, so Art of Dying, Beautiful Girl, third song, We're in the Bees, folks. The George Harrison album features Blow Away, and Blow Away's always been one of my favorites
Hmm.
from when I first heard it on the radio when I was 14 years old. Um, it had a magic to it for me. And that whole George Harrison album, you hit the nail on the head, Ken, with your words about George Harrison. That is another one which arguably you could say is a perfect album. Um, and the vibe of the whole album, it being a very mellow, but not mellow in so mellow can have bad connotations, that word.
Hmm.
It could mean, um, boring to some or elevator music to some, but it has a pleasant, very Saturday afternoon feel to me because when I was a kid growing up, a lot of times, uh, um, Saturdays was the day when I listened to my music because Monday through Friday there was school and there was homework. And, then comes Saturday, um, the pressure was off. And for some reason, also in the late 70s, George had a presence. And I always seemed to always, he only made a couple of appearances, but George Saturdays, Saturday Night Live, his appearances on Saturday Night Live and the 33 and the third and George Harrison albums, just it created a thing for me from when I was a kid that I've carried. And I don't know what it is. It's this vibe that
Hmm.
that period had in my life and those albums. They don't make sense, I'm sure, to any one of you out there, and they're not supposed to. It's just, something I connect with and blow away was this song from George Harrison for a couple of months when it was on the charts.
I know what you're feeling because I feel the same way. Those
Yeah,
two
you
albums.
can't put words on it because it's a totally personal thing. It happens at a time I wish it could happen today. But life's different and life's crazy and even like when Paul puts out his new record, when Ringo's new album comes out, I'm not going to spend the time with it that I would have 50 years ago had it come out. When you're younger and life's simpler and less cluttered. And, I would sit there and dissect the lyrics on the inner sleeve and and remember every little ding and dent that was on the album cover,
Mhm.
or where the maybe surface noise was on my record. That today, when I'm listening to my CDs, I'll still listen for that little skipper, little, it's just something that sticks from when you're a kid. And those two George Harrison albums, 33 and the Third and George Harrison, have that vibe for me. So
Blow Away also had is another one with a really nice video.
yeah,
A very
yeah.
simple video,
And
very clean video.
all of these songs would have been brilliant Beatles songs had, not that, had they done more work together here from time to time. It would have been so hard to keep some of George's songs, so many of George's songs off of Beatle albums had they made one, say, in the late 70s.
Mhm.
You know.
Well,
Okay, so
they were great the way they came out.
Art of Dying, Beautiful Girl, Blow Away, and now Cheer Down, which I think Ken picked from the
Mhm.
Lethal Weapon 2 soundtrack. Um, and it made its way onto Best of Dark Horse. Um, and it must be on another compilation, if I'm not mistaken. I still find it amazing that Cockamamie Business and
Poor little girl.
thank you. From the Bust the Dark Horse album are floating out there in the netherworld right now because Best of Dark Horse is out of print. Cheer Down, just a great tune. It was the song that to me it should have been on. It probably wasn't written at the time, but should have been on Cloud Nine. It's cut from that same cloth, that Cloud Nine feel. Cheer Down. And the live version is great because it's George and Eric dueling at the end. They're taking turns riffing off each other. The guitar part that you were alluding to on the record, the studio version, that's George, and
Oh,
that's George and Eric going back and forth
I never heard
uh,
that. I thought
on
that was
Live in
all
Japan.
George.
Now
Oh,
I think
live
it's
in
both of
Japan.
them.
Live in
Yeah,
Japan.
the Live in Japan
I
version, the
thought you
live
said the
version.
studio version. Okay.
Yeah, and that just is another. That was one of the highlights of Live in Japan for me. It
Yeah.
was the live version of Cheer Down. Great song, kind of just came out. Um, was a single coming out of Cloud Nine that era. Surprised it wasn't a bigger hit in the middle of the whole Traveling Wilburys thing. The Cheer Down kind of
Mm.
managed to somehow get lost in the shuffle.
Well, that song was actually pitched to Eric Clapton to do. There were four songs that George offered Eric, and he only ended up using Run So Far, which was on the Journeyman album.
Right, right,
And so George offered him Cheer Down, and he also offered him That Kind of Woman, which he did record. And it
right,
ended up on the Remaining Angel, Nobody's Child album. But
right.
as far as being on an Eric Clapton album, the only one of those songs that he actually recorded and put on one of his albums was Run So Far. But I'm
Right.
not sure what the fourth song was, too. But there were four songs George gave to Eric.
And the single, Cheer Down single, was that Zigzag was the B-side, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Zigzag?
Zigzag was the B-side of When We Was Fab.
What
Cheer
was Cheer
Down,
Down's?
Cheer Down. I only have the CD single with just the one song.
Yeah, and these are the things I was just talking about this. A few years, some years later. I mean, I can still picture. I don't have the best pressing of Cheer Down. You ever
Hmm.
get a record that's slightly pressed off center?
Uh-huh.
So when it sounds a little warped and yet the record's flat as a pancake, but And then you're like, should I bring it back to the store and exchange it? I'm gonna feel like an idiot going in the store and going, my record's off center. Your head's off center, kid. Get out of here. Um, but my copy of Cheer Down is a little. I
Uh,
don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, folks, but that I remember.
well, that's more important.
Yeah, this is true. I didn't have breakfast this morning. Anyway, so that's Cheer Down is the fourth song. My fifth song, alphabetical order up to D's. Don't Let Me Wait Too Long from Living in the Material World, which I think Allan picked. Yes.
Mhm.
Living in the Material World is another album where I could make a case for just about every song on the album, including That Is All and Be Here Now, and what was another one that was an almost for me? The light that has lighted the world. The Lord loves the one who loves the Lord. That were others that I was considering. And it just was like, I can't get these all on this list. But something has to be there because in my book, again, I say Divot 33 and a third. I say All Things Must Pass, but Living in the Material World is right in there.
Hmm.
You know, those and the George Harrison album, those four to me are almost perfect, if not perfect. Those four albums.
So those are the four best of George's solo albums.
Yeah, those are my favorite. Yeah, even there. And
So
and here yeah.
you wouldn't put Cloud Nine in there.
No, you know why radio may have killed Cloud Nine for me a little bit. When
Mm.
Cloud Nine came out, I loved the exposure George was getting, but got my mind set on you and when we was fab just got pounded on the radio.
Mhm.
And that may and a little bit as much as I love Jeff Lynne and ELO, his production at that time started to get a little, for me, a little tiring because everything was starting to sound like ELO offshoot. It was fun when the Wilburys came out, Cloud Nine. It was fun with Petty's album Full Moon Fever because I was always on the fence with Tom Petty in the 80s. I wasn't some of his stuff I liked, some I really didn't like. And Full Moon Fever was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then
Hmm.
after a while, it was like, all right, even he even produced Randy Newman, and it was like, okay, Randy Newman sounds like he's in ELO now. It was starting to, and I always felt that way about T-Bone Burnett, who I think is brilliant. I love his solo albums and his production work, but after a while, around the time that Robert Plant and Alison Krauss's first record came out, um, T-Bone Burnett seemed to be producing everybody. Elvis Costello was working with him a lot again in the aughts, I think it was.
Yeah.
After a while, it started to get a little tiring. The drums were very muddy. They sounded like they were recorded underwater. There was this old school Americana vibe on everything T-Bone Burnett touched that was starting to tire on me a little bit. Um, so as a result of that, I tend not to listen to Cloud Nine as much. That's
But
one
you,
album that
I'm
what?
sorry, but you said you liked the production on the Traveling Wilburys. You said
Yeah, yeah.
the
But
Wilburys
that
came
was,
out after Cloud Nine.
I know. But then after a while, shortly after that, it was like, all right, it's starting now to start
Yeah.
sounding like same old. And not long after that, then Jeff brings ELO back with the Zoom album. And for the seven people that have Zoom who bought it when it came out, um, it was like this is great. This is like perfect pop. Every song sort of does sound the same though, but I'm not complaining
Hmm.
that every song sort of sounded the same. For me, it all started with the last ELO album in the 80s, Balance of Power. That I guess it's a very compressed sound that Jeff was leaning up to. Um, Balance of Power, and then everything that Jeff was involved with after that. It started to wear thin on me a little bit. And Cloud Nine, maybe I don't reach for it as often as a result. Anyway,
Okay. Just curious.
and I don't feel that way about T-Bone Burnett any longer because had the opportunity to step back and not, so many T-Bone Burnett productions were getting played on WFUV at the time, and Um, it was like you could be guaranteed that it was going to have this certain vibe to it that after a while, all right, I know what this record's going to sound like. T-Bone produced it, and yep, this very kind of old school Americana thing happening. Like I said, I never liked the sound of the drums on a lot of the production. They sounded very, like thuds, and they were underwater. And
Hmm. A lot of producers have their own sound and they don't
uh,
move away from it enough. So,
yes, you're right. Um, anyway, well, and the key of a good producer, I've always felt, is not make the recording you're producing sound like something you might have done.
hmm.
All right, if it happens a little bit, that's fine, but after a while, I think Jeff Lynne for me, even Mark Hudson with Ringo. I miss Ringo working with Mark Hudson today,
Hmm.
but I was ready for a break when they parted
Right.
because I felt like there was a quality to Ringo's records, which I loved, but every album was starting to have that same
Sound.
sound to it that I miss now, actually.
Hmm.
Um, all right, I'm only halfway through my list. I'll speed it up. Don't Let Me Wait Too Long. Did I mention that?
Yep.
Yep.
That's where I left off. Dream Away from Gon Troppo.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Is my next pick. Gon Troppo, another album where, there was a couple of things here, including the title track. Um, and wow, I crossed that out. Good. Yeah, I can't even see what the other choices were I was going to go with. But Dream Away from from Gon Troppo. And then it's back to three consecutive songs from 33 and a third. It's What You Value.
Hmm.
That's a great rocker, great driving tune. Just like um, Art of Dying from All Things Must Pass. George was hanging out with a funky group of musicians at that time, and
Yep.
there's a there's a funk to 33 and a third. I could have picked Woman Don't You Cry for Me as well from that album, but I went with It's What You Value. Um, to me, as close to perfection of any George Harrison hit single is this song.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
love his guitar playing in that, the guitar solos. Um, Clever as heck. And another one I remember seeing the video on, pretty sure it was on Saturday Night Live and Crackerbox
It
Fat
was.
Palace, definitely. There was another one that I could have picked, Crackerbox Palace, but I went with this song. And also from 33 and the third, George Harrison takes a Cole Porter song and makes it his, True Love. That should have been a hit.
Hmm.
True
It
Love
was
could have
the
been
third
an
single.
enormous hit too.
Yeah.
Um, and wrapping up my list at W is Wah Wah from All Things Must Pass. There's just, there is a little bit of an overmodulated, overproduced feel to that song, but I love it. And that's what makes it even better.
Hmm.
That's Phil Spector to the excess sounding brilliant. Why have eight guitars when you can put nine on? Um, and the emotion behind the song, the energy to it, the the effort that George has to put into the song to sing it above a 25-piece horn section and nine guitarists and and that George, when he wrote it, as Allan explained, but there's probably other underlying anxieties that he had that were coming out in that song. And whereas um, if I had wrote a song like that, it would have been "You're really pissing me off," and I'm really pissed off. But George comes out with "Wah Wah" and expresses more emotions with two nonsense words. So in alphabetical order: Art of Dying, Beautiful Girl, Blow Away, Cheer Down, Don't Let Me Wait Too Long, Dream Away, It's What You Value, This Song, True Love, Wah Wah. And those are my 10 favorite George Harrison songs today. If we did the show next week, there'll be some changes, but
Maybe we should do what Kit suggested and just have a list of pissed off George songs.
did she say that?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, she did. Um, It's just, and also that period, that All Things Must Pass album, when I'm listening to it, sometimes I think, my God, this guy was writing this stuff.
Hmm.
He must have had a bunch of these songs that we don't even aren't even quite aware of in pieces that were written when the Beatles were still together. And I'm like, my goodness. And the chances of having three songwriters of that caliber meet each other as teenagers, end up in the same band together.
Hmm.
That's not going to happen again.
With any band to have just John Lennon in it would be enough, or just
Yeah,
Paul, or just George,
right.
as songwriters. So yeah, but
Although this show has three like incredible hosts, and what's the chances of the three of us ending up coming together and creating perhaps the greatest podcast in the history of the world? So,
Hmm.
not the most modest hosts in the history of the world. Yeah,
I
we
th
are.
I
But
think, George, it's really kind of interesting that I think his reputation and the way people feel about him as a songwriter now is much, better than it was even when he died in 2001, I don't know, at least for me, I've come to an appreciation of his songs that I'm not sure I had back then. There were a lot of songs of his I liked back then, but I don't know that we could have done a show where all of us had made a list of like, 30 or 40 songs in order to get 10, you know, and almost everything left out is something that could have been really on the list. I mean, uh, and I was thinking while we were talking when we were talking before about Zigzag, I mean, there were so many B-sides of his that weren't even on albums. Great, great tracks. I mean, a couple of throwaways too, like I Don't Care Anymore, and but like Deep Blue,
yeah,
I loved Deep Blue when it came out. I played it as much as I played Bangladesh on the other side,
right.
and there's just so much stuff that's and I think that I think he's more appreciated now than he
Oh
was
yeah.
25, 30 years ago.
I
and
hate to say this,
thankfully,
but
yeah.
sometimes you have to die.
Mm,
That helps. I mean we see it all along. Um, you know, if Jim Morrison was still with us today, or lived at least until his 80s, I don't know if Jim Morrison's star would be shining as brightly
mm,
as it does. Same with Kurt Cobain. I really do think that, and John Lennon even. Lennon was definitely had his flaws that we loved him for, and he would be the first to admit it. But the way John's life ended, that's unfortunately what happens. I think people, took to the nice quiet Beatle when they heard he died. Oh, that was sad. Oh, I like that song. Watching the news. Oh, that was another good song. I didn't know George wrote that song. Um, uh,
Sometimes people completely overlook the success that they had anyway. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how successful these four guys were on their own if you take a
mm,
look at the charts. And a lot of, especially young people, have no idea how successful. It's kind of like now Paul McCartney feels a need to to uh, to bring out the fact that Wings was successful. It's like, to me, you don't need to prove that. I
mhm.
followed you in the 70s. I know all the hits you had in the 70s, but there are some people who didn't follow it as closely as we did, and they have no
Most people
idea.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about when All Things Must Pass came out, this flood of material that George had, and some of those songs were written towards the end of the Beatles. There were two songs there, Isn't It a Pity and The Art of Dying, that George started writing during Revolver.
Mhm.
And John rejected Isn't It a Pity? I'm not saying, I don't know if the songs were finished in 1966, because actually The Art of Dying, there's the demo there where George has different lyrics where he's mentioning Brian Epstein in there. So whether they were finished or not, you know, one of the great benefits of the Beatles breaking up was so that this other material would come out.
Mm.
Because if they stayed together and they didn't have solo careers, And being as prolific as they were with their solo careers, we'd have to wait for one album every year, probably. And, George would get two songs and there'd be another 10 that he wrote that we wouldn't hear. So I'm just grateful that, we have so much material from the four of them. And in the case of George, he was definitely towards the end held back quite a lot. And he didn't want to be the type of person to say me, me, me. I want to be just as important as John and Paul. But he wanted some representation in the group, and he had to settle for his two songs per album.
And if they had
You're right. Yeah.
continued, they'd had that meeting where they all
Right.
agreed to have everyone have four on the album, or two for Ringo. But interesting how that could have played out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually Paul that was against it in that meeting.
We never hear, or maybe we do. Maybe Alan has a little, or something, Ken, that I don't recall or I've never heard. I wonder what John and Paul thought of All Things Must Pass when it came out. You know
I
what I'm
don't know
saying?
if I've
They
heard
had,
that.
you had
I
to
don't.
listen. You had to be.
No.
George puts out a triple album? What?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Uh, You know, Give me that. Let me listen to that.
Well, I don't know what they said about the music of All Things Must Pass. Didn't John say that George looked like Leon Russell with asthma? Something like that. But not about the music. Not talking about the music. I would love to have heard all four Beatles talk about each other's solo music and what they thought of it. You get little snippets here and there. Like
Mhm.
George liked I'm Carrying from London Town. And what was the other one that I read just recently? It could have been maybe Baby's Request he liked.
Yes, yes, he
So
liked
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So, you don't hear enough about that. I wish I'd hear Paul say, well, on All Things Must Pass, I like this song and that one and that one.
Mhm. Mhm.
You hear criticism like Ringo not liking Ram when it came out,
Yeah.
you know. Like,
Yeah, that I thought was always thought that was strange. And John didn't like wildlife or didn't thought Paul could do much better or something. I remember John being asked that question, but I don't remember what album it was for now.
hmm,
But I would have loved to have heard, you know, I'm sure they were happy for George, but look what this guy was sitting on.
yeah.
Yeah.
You weren't even giving him the time of day to get through one little rehearsal on one or two of these songs. And The Art of Dying being written in the mid 60s. Who writes songs like that when they're 22,
What about
21?
Tomorrow Never Knows? You know,
Right.
they're all
Two guys in the same band writing songs like that in the mid 60s.
it tells you how brilliant they were to be that young and that creative. Yeah.
Well, speaking of brilliant, let's go around the horn and tell folks all about our brilliance and the other things that we do. And so we can.
All righty.
All right, Alan,
Uh,
now your turn. No, I'm kidding. I'm just
you can always check out my radio show called Every Little Thing, which is heard on some 50 radio stations, but the easiest way to listen is on WFDU's website, WFDU.FM. The show is heard broadcast live, even though it's pre-recorded, but it's on Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock, Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And you can also go directly to their archives page and type in the words every little thing, and you'll have the last 2 week shows that you can access anytime you want. Okay. And by the way, I just want to thank anybody watching this show or listening to the show that made donations to the station. We just had our annual pledge drive and we surpassed our goal. And
nice.
many people wrote in mentioning my show as a favorite among many. We have a lot of great shows. So for any of you that did make a contribution, thank you so much for that. And it's a fantastic radio station. Don't just listen to my show. Listen all week. You're bound to hear a lot of great stuff. If you love oldies and you don't want to hear the same oldies over and over and over, you want to go a little bit deeper, that's a great station to check out. WFDU.FM. On my YouTube channel, which is Ken Michaels Radio, I did a Beatles preference show. It was my third preference show, where I take two or three songs or albums, Beatles or solo, and my guests have to pick which ones they prefer to listen to, not necessarily which one is the better or best of the two or three, just what they feel like listening to. It's like I've said, if you had to choose between Hey Jude or Revolution, which one would you pick? You might say Revolution, but you might think Hey Jude is a better song. It doesn't matter. It's what you feel like listening to now and explain why you feel that way. So I had Ken Womack's, what I call posse, a few people that have written with Ken Womack for his books, including Jason Krupa, who wrote the book All Things Must Pass Away, Harrison Clapton, and other assorted love songs about the relationship between George and Eric, and Scott Fryman, who, as I said in the news earlier, is now working on two books with Ken Womack, exploring all the Beatles recordings with detailed information about every single song. Okay, so those are the three that are in that show, sharing their own opinions about specific songs and albums, group and solo, from the Beatles, and picking which ones they prefer to listen to. It's really a fun idea. So you really should check it out if you can. Also, I just did a show with three guests from overseas. Luca Perassi, who I mention all the time, is from Italy. He's written a whole bunch of books. This is his most recent one on George Harrison, on the George Harrison album,
I got it.
Day Turned to Bright. Have you read it yet, Darren?
I didn't start reading it yet, but I did get it.
Okay. I should be interviewing Luca this week about the book. So Luca was in this show. Sam Wiles from England, who hosts Paul or Nothing, an all Paul McCartney podcast, and Owen Lynn from Ireland, who writes for a whole bunch of music magazines and also put out the book George Harrison in the 1970s, just released now as an ebook. Um, we did a show with the three of them all about who they think Paul McCartney's best songwriting partner has been since John Lennon. So it's a choice between Denny Lane, Eric Stewart, and Elvis Costello. So each of them give their opinion between the three of them, since those are the three that really wrote the most with Paul in his post-Beatles career. They each pick which one they think was the best collaborator, songwriting-wise, with Paul, and they explain why. So those two shows are my most recent ones on Ken Michaels Radio. And of course, we do still have Talk More Talk with Darren and Kit O'Toole. Right now, Kit couldn't make it for this show because of family health issues, but she might be back on the next show with us. We don't know yet if we're going back to having two separate shows for a while, but there will be times anyway when Kit's going to join us if it's the same topic that both shows would cover. So anyway, Kit sends her regards to all of you, and that's what's going on with me. Oh, don't
All
forget,
right.
website, kenmichaelsradio.com, Beatles trivia. Every single 2 weeks, there's a new one. You can win the Luca Perassi book. I have several new books to include. And one of them is the Back to the Egg book that Luca wrote. And Charles Rosenay, his book of Beatle lists, the top 10 lists from various entertainers and artists, different aspects of the Beatles where they list their top 10. A lot
All
going on
right.
there.
All right. Alan?
Okay. I'm just working on volume three these days, so I don't have an awful lot to report. But it's coming along, and Adrian is researching, like crazy, and Yeah, it's it's coming. You can reach me on Facebook at either Alan Kozinn or Alan Kozinn Remixed. There's also a Legacy Facebook page, McCartney Legacy. Um, you can contact all of us here at Things We Said Today radio show at gmail.com. And we're on X at Things We Said Fab and BlueSky at Things We Said Today. That's at things at symbol Things We Said Today. Uh, and of course, our Facebook page, our group Facebook page, Things We Said Today video podcasts, where we post links to the shows and things like that. But if you are wherever you listen to us, there's a way to subscribe and you should do it. And also, there's usually a way to hit like, and you should do that too. So basically, that's it for me, Darren.
All right. As for me, you can listen to my show, Noises from the Valley. It's on WKZE in Red Hook, New York, and Dutchess County at 98.1 FM or 105.9 FM. I think the deal is, even though they're in the town of Red Hook and one or two towns right around there, you have to go to 105.9 to listen. Something to do with one of the mountains. It's in the right off the Catskill Mountains, and a weird signal thing. So they've got two locations on the dial, 98.1 and 105.9. Or if you're not in the Catskills, Hudson Valley area, you stream it anywhere on the globe at WKZE.com or get their app. It's another way you can listen. Noises from the Valley, my show is on 7 to 11 p.m. on Friday nights, and it does get archived on their website, WKZE.com. I'm assuming for like maybe probably a couple of weeks. I'm not exactly sure about how long. And almost every show ends up having some sort of little mini theme in there. And unfortunately, lately, they've been memorial sets. This past show, I played a set of songs by bluesman John Hammond, who died recently, and I promised to do another one. I was just enjoying the song so much. I said, hey, you know what? This is my show. And next week we'll do some more John Hammond songs. And now, word that Country Joe McDonald has died. So I'll be playing some Country Joe and the Fish and some solo Country Joe McDonald. And that's almost becoming sort of a weekly thing where I'm saluting another artist that has passed. But that's what's coming up on this Friday's show. That would be the show for the 13th of March. And look for me on Facebook. Two Facebook pages. Just Google not Google, search my name. You'll find one or both pages, and send me a message and like and listen to Noises from the Valley, and look for our next show. Talk More Talk. Look for Things We Said Today, or the combination of the two. For Ken Michaels, for Allan Kozinn, Kit O'Toole, we're thinking of you. Thanks so much, folks, for hanging with us, and we will see you next time.